Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Govitz, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening's Fireplace Chat. This is a series that you're looking in on that I started a couple of weeks back when we were all sort of placed on the sort of stuck inside situation that we all find ourselves in. And it was an opportunity for me to do something that I had been thinking about doing for some time here for the community, and that is to capture a bit of community history as it were, and to share that history and other matters of importance with the community. It was something that I was thinking about actually doing, like a couple of years from now. But as it turns out, since we're all sort of stuck inside, I felt like it was no time like the present to do it. And so I moved forward with it. Now, that is your warning that this is a broadcast that is being done with the best technology that sort of have at the moment, and that I'm running the technology. It's a one-person show right now in terms of making this happen, and using this platform isn't the most ideal, nor does it allow for the broadest broadcast out to the community, if you will. But it is working so far. And so we've had some great shows to this point of community members. We had an opportunity, in fact, to have a conversation with Sadie Woodruff, who is a youngster in our school system recently. And that was a great opportunity. And all of the interviews to date have been something to do with individuals from the community who have had some play on the national stage. And so we started out with Brandon Calhoun. We had World War II veteran Rich Roars, which was a fantastic conversation. Sadie Woodruff, just a ton of fun. Jason Brown, filmmaker and outdoor filmmaker and artist this past week. Coach Roy Johnston and his many milestones. And it seems like I'm forgetting someone in there. But at any rate, that gives you a sense of the flavor of the shows that we've had to this point. And they've all just been done out of the goodness of the heart in trying to deliver them, albeit a little bit, sometimes a little bit choppy, because again, it's me and the technology that we're using that's available to us. You are all muted coming into the conversation this evening, as you are for all of them that you have joined and any of the future ones that you join. But there is a chat box at the bottom, and if you'll notice that, there is an opportunity at some point, if you have a question, that you can click on the chat box, and we will try to view those and bring any questions that were unanswered to you, or to our guest tonight, Joe Passalacqua, who I will introduce here in just a moment. But I just want to tell you a little bit more about this. First of all, again, you're all muted, and I see that many of you still have your cameras on. And so just keep that in mind, that your cameras are on. If you want to turn your cameras off, that would be great. But if you want to keep them on so others can see you, that's fine too, but just be mindful of that. The other thing that did in bringing these conversations to the community is set some ground rules. And part of those ground rules have been always starting out with this sort of little intro that says no negativity. Particularly this evening, there really is no need for negativity in any of the conversations that we have, and I would say the same for tonight. When you look at the situation we find ourselves in as a nation, and particularly when we drill down to our own community, we have individuals who are in a position who are doing their doggone best to try and make things work in a not very ideal situation. It isn't ideal for any of us right now in our own situation, being sort of stuck inside and away from family. Yesterday was Easter, and couldn't even many of us celebrate with our families. And so just keep that in mind, that this is almost like building the airplane as we're trying to make it fly. And that's not an easy thing to do. So keep that in mind, and keep those people actually in your thoughts and prayers. The other thing is, in terms of this event and others, is they're all intended for families. All of them have been aimed at getting the kids around and watching the activity that is occurring. And in fact, the last show we did was a take on Little House on the Prairie. That's the one I missed. And that's one that has I have a direct descendancy to, Laura Ingalls Wilder. And so that was one of the last shows. And it was great to get kids around, and they've been a part of all of these conversations, and that's how we want this to be. And so if the kids aren't there, grab them, bring them in the room, because they're welcome to take part. Again, you're muted during the broadcast. I want to thank those who have had a hand in any of the broadcasts to this point. There are a number of people who have helped on the outside in trying to pull things together. Going to go to a new platform soon after we do this week's shows that are going to start with Red Rave. That's a Jason Brown film, and it's going to be a 3-part series that we're going to be offering starting this Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. It will not be the same address that you're on this evening in joining this Zoom. It will be a different Zoom address, and there are some outlets out there. I'm not personally putting it out into the public domain other than through listservs, so you'll have to gather it through other individuals putting it out on Facebook and the like. But it won't be this domain or invitation link. But it is a 3-part series, and it is about the 25-1 Beaverton basketball team of 2002. We'll have Coach Roy Johnston in and some of the players from that team as we watch this marvelous film that was done by Jason Brown for the community as a gift back then. And you'll greatly enjoy this 3-part series. And then we'll start into some other guests from there. So long as people watch and there's interest, then we'll continue to do the shows. That's sort of where we're at this point. The shows that we've already done are in production right now. They're being edited, and they will come back out for viewing once again, because I know a lot of people didn't get to see those first shows and have interest in that. So watch for those and watch for an announcement on that soon as we go to a new platform and put them out there for you. The other final thing that I will say before I introduce our guest tonight is that I have I put out, when I first put this invitation out to the community join, is that I said I will start every episode with a prayer, short prayer, and I will end every episode with a short prayer. And I hope that you can all agree with me that in these times, especially in these times, we can all use more of that. So if you'll join me in a quick word of prayer, then I'll introduce our guest tonight, Joe Passalacqua. Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to come together this evening in our community and wherever people are watching from to join as a community and to say thank you. Thank you for bringing people around the computers tonight, their phones, their tablets, wherever they're at, Lord, that they care enough to look in and are listening to with concern and interest over what our superintendent has to say. We give you thanks for Joe Passalacqua and his family and our Beaverton school family and our community. We thank you for the caring people that make that school operate. And we know that they're going through difficult and trying times, as we're going to talk about tonight, and all of the things that they have to do to make things work during these times of uncertainty. The one thing that is certain is your love. And we thank you for it, and we thank you for your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Hey, Joe, Mr. Joe Passalacqua, welcome. Thanks for being here with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Good to see you. Good to see that you're still a fan of the Red Wings. And as of right now, what did I just hear the other day? The Red Wings, if we stopped the season right now, would be champions?
Well,
right?
No, I guess I won't go that far, but
I know you're a big Wings fan and Lions fan and all things Detroit. So yeah, I see the Red Wing there on the wall behind you. You're originally from that area, right?
Yep, born and raised in Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about your background there.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep it clean. Detroit was and continues to, at times struggle. It was a rough upbringing. 4 boys in the house. I was the youngest of 4. We were so fortunate that after my parents' divorce, we moved just north of 8 Mile into East Detroit. So never really left the city limits of east side of Detroit. It's got some difficult memories, but something I'll always cherish. I love the city, even through thick and thin. So,
yeah. You still have a chance to go there and visit?
Well, through the stay home, stay safe, I'm very limited, only if my brother needs help. My mother passed a couple years ago. My dad lives in Florida, but the majority of my family's still down there. So, yeah, I try to go down there every once in a while, especially for the selection and the foods and a lot more variety and, some ethnicities of, a more populous area, but, and family. It's always good to go see family.
Yeah, it's always good to get back to family and all the fun things that you can do down there in the city for sure. But I'm guessing it's also good to get sort of home when you're there and sort of back to more quiet, more peaceful life as well, a little more tranquility. Even though your job is probably one of the most difficult there is some tranquility in being in northern Michigan.
Oh, for sure. It is something that I, at first was in shock. I'll be honest, in the year 2000 for growing up in Detroit my whole life, then moving out to Baltimore, Maryland, and used to the fast pace and all the things that were readily available to a lot more tranquil, relaxed, not as popular, uh, and grown accustomed to it. So for 20 years, it's something that I don't think I will have a desire to move back to a very populated area ever again.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about your educational path, your career. You leave the Detroit schools and then go where?
I went on to Grand Valley State for 1 year, then transferred to Eastern Michigan University. And at that point, my current wife and I were looking at places we weren't sure what we were going to do, but thought we needed to pursue a master's degree, and kind of looked at a map, pinpointed 3 areas that suited both of our needs. And one of them was Baltimore, Maryland, Denver, Colorado, or Ann Arbor, Michigan. And we both agreed that we wanted to try something different and move out, and had a job fair at Eastern Michigan University. Interviews went real well, so we decided to pack up and go take a look at what the East Coast had to have for us. I stopped in the board office and told them what I did at the job interview or job fair, and asked if there was anything open for the next year. They had 2 openings at the time, and the gentleman asked me if I was interested in an impromptu interview, because we were talking a little bit about what brought me in town. And I told him I was just there to check it out about grad school and potential employment. And the next day, he set up 2 impromptu interviews for me, 9 a.m. at Parkville Middle and 11 a.m. at Woodlawn High School. And by the time we were done with our trip and headed home, I had 2 voicemails with job offers on my answer machine. So I was fortunate and
Mm-hmm.
jumped at the one at Parkville Middle. My wife, at the time, my girlfriend, became fiancee soon. We moved out there, started teaching, coaching, football, wrestling, teaching math. And after a year, we both enrolled into grad school where we both finished our master's degree. I presented my thesis statement on a Thursday evening at 7 p.m. And the next day, after 5 years of being in Maryland, the next day at 8 a.m., we were packed up and we moved back to the state of Michigan with the potential of starting a family
Yeah.
and being with family.
All right.
That's
So
what brought us back.
we fast forward from there. You end up with family. You end up actually in Beaverton schools at some point.
Yeah.
And
Right from
you're a
Maryland.
teacher.
Yep. Right from Maryland. As we were moving back, we both agreed we did not want to move to the Detroit area. Had a few offers in the northern part, but we tried to figure out what would be conducive for both of us. And at the time, Beaverton had a math position open, and they were looking for starting the wrestling program. And being a head varsity wrestling coach for 5 years and a math teacher in Maryland, I happened to fit both of those needs. And
Uh-huh.
after a couple interviews and whatnot, Mr. Ashcroft offered me the job. And here we are 20 years later.
Yeah.
Fortunate to be back. I left for 5 years from the community, but I never left. Um, Always kept tabs on the red, and I am fortunate now to be back.
Yeah.
Um,
So you say Mr. Ashcroft, you mean Bill Ashcroft. Bill was an educator in Beaverton's school systems, an administrator for, I don't know, do you know how many years? All of 30, I would say.
Sir, that's a great question. I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure, but he left shortly after that, and it was sad to see him go. I
Yes.
enjoyed.
Great man. Yeah, great man. And he, in fact, was one of my junior high school teachers. So
Yeah.
I know he was around quite some time before he departed, but a good guy, no doubt. So you're over in Shepherd School System, and you're over there after leaving Beaverton. You end up in a principal's position over there, and then
Correct.
you come back to Beaverton Schools most recently.
Correct. Took over the high school principalship in Shepherd and developed the early college program. And in 5 years there, was very fortunate. Had a great staff, great community, and um, but I never left Beaverton. In
Yeah.
terms of my heart, I was always keeping tabs with folks and watching what was going on in the 5 years I was gone. But I cannot discount, my time in Shepherd or my 5 years in Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah.
They all have a special place and a lot of good memories in both. All
Yeah.
three, excuse me.
Yeah, no question. And we both know some people over in the Shepherd area, and they're great community there too. But the one thing that I think about Beaverton is if you give it a chance, it will infect your heart, and you just can't get that infection out of your heart.
Yeah, it made it, you know, it was ironic because outside of wearing Red Wing gear, I had never put on a red piece of equipment, um, anything remotely. If it wasn't a sports team, red was never really in my wardrobe apparel. So I made sure now that I've returned, I had to get a lot more red back into my apparel. So
Nice.
yeah.
Well, so you're back. You are the superintendent, and what an inaugural season!
Huh.
I mean, if
Wow.
yeah, so we are now several weeks into this virus situation as a nation, and as I started the opening with, we're all sort of locked inside, and
Mhm.
uh, one of the organizations or entities quickly to succumb to the um, virus situation was the K-12 system. And you end up with governor's orders and otherwise, everyone ends up going out, and we're all in our homes. And now the order has been extended now to April 30, at least for those in the workforce world. But then school is called off.
Right. Well, face to face is closed, shut down, but the instruction will go on. That's going to be the difficult part, is, even trying to convince my own kids, they said school's done, school's over. Well, school face to face is done. Now it's a larger task, for us to try to continue to finish the year so that we don't have the significant gaps um, that we sometimes will see over the summer months when students aren't actively engaged. So we got our hands full, but we got a great group, that has been working hard. And the one thing that I got to say right off the get go is, we've put a plan in place, but we continue to say it, and I'm going to continue to reiterate. We need people to understand and please be patient that this plan can change. I celebrated a staff meeting last week with my admin, and from 8 a.m. to noon, nothing had changed. So I celebrated that part because every demand and everything that was happening wasn't just changing daily, it was almost changing hourly.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that nothing had changed in those 4 hours in the morning was kind of a bonus because we didn't have to go back to the drawing board. And my whiteboard, my drawing board, my notes on my computer, I couldn't tell you how many times, things got erased or scrapped,
Yeah.
we're back to the drawing board. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we got a great group that is coming together. And all I've asked them is, of course, be patient, but be a problem solver. I need people to think critically and let's figure out the situations we're under, the problems that we have, and let's attack it, um, together.
Yeah. Well, too often I think what we find is um, individuals, particularly when under stress, they want an answer. They
Hmm.
want it now. What's the answer? And they look to leaders for those answers. And there are times when, as you're saying, as a leader, you have to simply say, "I don't have the answer. I don't have it. It doesn't exist today, but together, if we work together, we can build this out." And that's what you did.
Yes, and that is difficult because, Scott, everyone expects you to be in the know and be knowledgeable of
Mm.
everything, and to say to folks and be honest. The fact that we don't have those answers yet, but over time we will. Once we get that clarity, that understanding, um, and that's been the hardest part. And I'll be honest, it's been extremely difficult for me because I like to have a plan. I like to have a vision, and when things constantly change, it has caused a lot of undue stress. I won't say undue, but stress that
Hmm.
we could all do without.
Right.
But the fact that I got a team that I can go back to, and problem solve these things together, is always a bonus, and
Hmm.
I bounce ideas off all
Yeah.
unions, union leaders, my board,
Yeah.
groups of teachers, my admin, even my office staff. We had a great conversation today. Yes, we were all in. We had essential business to take care of today, but you know, it's just nice to have folks that understand the situation and realize we're not going to have all the answers right now, but give it some time and we're going to get after it.
Right. One of the things that I think that we all need to do is step back and take a moment to realize the gravity of the situation in terms of its size and scope, and be able to put things in perspective. And that's often the case, no matter how big or small the issue, is simply put things in perspective. If it was an issue around um, your son or daughter or loved one being very, very, very gravely ill or worse, how important would whatever it is you're putting such an emphasis on be at that point? And the answer is almost always, if not always, the same. It really wouldn't be. So I think what we need to do is give you, Joe, and give the team some breathing room and some opportunity to have some understanding to say it is being built as we go, but with a great team that really has the vision of the kids in mind. In the end, it will all work out.
Yeah, and Scott, well put. It is that old adage, you're flying the plane as you're building it, and that is realistic. And I'd have to be honest, there were times where even it, and it doesn't bother me, a thought of mine, I've got no problem scrapping. When the team and we vet it together says, maybe we approach it this way. That's part that, I don't get too worked up over because, I really want people to, in an essence, not challenge me, but hey, if there's other thoughts out there, I've begged them, to please speak up because especially in these unique circumstances, to try to think of everything in a distance learning plan when we're a traditional face-to-face school district, we have a lot of, constraints, restrictions that we have to deal with, that maybe some of the other schools don't. And I'm fortunate to see some of that. Both of my kids attend Midland Public due to where we live, and how they're rolling out their learning plan is totally different than what Beaverton is trying to do. Um, there's, we are spread out a lot more, 225 square miles to a much smaller distance, square mileage for Midland. And the fact that they, can honestly say 90% or above this community has reliable internet connectivity. And that is something that we know our community, we can't offer,
Yeah.
especially by the Michigan Department of Education's description. In order
Hmm.
for reliable internet connectivity, they're asking families to be able to stream two videos, not one, but two simultaneously with no glitches. And I've had some Zoom meetings where my admin, just one of them at home, is glitching in and out. That's not their
Yeah.
fault.
Yeah.
That's just our internet connectivity issues. And Scott, we've been talking about that, with Bob Balzer and the big group that we've been trying to attack this with. We know we have an area of concern, and I think the government is starting to see it now.
Yeah. For
The
sure.
big digital divide
Yeah.
it's real.
Yeah, this will definitely bring it to the forefront as an issue to be reckoned with. But let's do some definitions for some individuals looking in who may not know what you're talking about at this point. So you're home, kids are all sent home, and the governor says school's out, and for the remainder of the year, and you have to come up with something called a continuous learning plan. And so, what is a continuous learning plan in short, and what is it you have to deliver?
Well, they're hoping that you can deliver the same type of learning and educational and academic engagement, you know, from a distance that you would in a face-to-face classroom with 20 to 30 kids. You know, doing it via internet, it may be a little bit easier, because you can share screens, you can immediately share documents. But without that connectivity, it makes it difficult, So we are being tasked with a couple of options. The fact that the majority of our staff, or excuse me, community doesn't have internet connectivity. So we've been tasked with, trying to create some academic packets, you know, for the remainder of the year, and looking at, first and foremost, everyone's mental health is huge, through this crisis. How are the families doing? We didn't jump right into the academics. We jumped into, what are the needs first and foremost? Are people, you know, getting the meals, getting all their basic needs met? Then we can try to push a little bit of academics on them. And not having this ability to do Zooms, internet, Google shares, makes it a little bit difficult. Our staff has a difficult job, because we are being asked to create packets, send them home. And the fact, at times, the concern of just having all those packets come back. We're not going to do that. We're going to send them out. We're going to try to assess students, and how is that going to happen? Well, some of it may be through a phone call. We may utilize some of our support staff to assist a teacher, and I'm going to pick one. I see Mr. Wiki's on. He may have some science content that he delivered to students, and after a few days with some reminders and or prompts, in the packet, how can we test those kids or assess that they're understanding? Because our job is to try to make sure over these next 8 weeks that the most important things in their class are the ones that we hit.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot try to cover all of the remaining content. That is just not realistic. But is there 6 to 8 things that these kids, that in the month of July, someone could walk down the street and ask them, can you tell me what's the difference between mitosis and meiosis? And they would be able to do that. I'm throwing out a science concept. I'm not giving you the answer to it because I don't remember it. I was a math teacher, but
well, each of you have at the bottom of your screen, you can do a reaction, and the reaction could be thumbs up. I know the answer to that, if you know it, but I am going to guess. Well, we shouldn't venture to guess, but just try to be a little lighthearted there. But
there we go.
So you have. This is what's curious to me about it, Joe, is the kids are sent home and you still have these learning objectives that you're trying to establish. Is every kid going to pass? Every kid, no matter where they were at in their learning level, they're moving forward no matter what?
Those are great questions, and they're all locally controlled. The biggest concern out of all districts, not just Beaverton, is the fact that the kids will completely disengage. That's where it's going to run kids into trouble, is if they completely disengage, don't do any of the content, don't return calls, don't engage in a Zoom. Well, the objective of this is not to penalize students. Some of the districts are looking at it, with where the grades were at, and, kind of looking at if they were passing, then we're going to assist them to keep them passing and move them on. The majority of the classes are going credit, no credit. In the majority, other than a complete disconnect, 99% of the kids will be moving forward. Now, I don't want to say that with the 1% listening in and saying, sweet, Mr. P said we don't have to do any work. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But if you completely disconnect, you run that risk, where you could be assigned to a summer school and incomplete, because we're tasked with, the difficulty is from January 18th, I'm guessing, the start of the semester, until what's supposed to be June 3rd, we're missing 3 months of that content. Well, we don't want to stop the learning. We're going to try to still provide the learning, see if the kids can, pick up the essentials. And then we have a significant task of our multi-tiered systems of support to try to remediate and fill in those gaps, if any, in the upcoming years.
I just think, Joe, about, for example, a student who might be struggling in math, let's say. They're already behind. Before this even happened, they were already behind. They're already struggling. And now we're going to send a packet home, which is the best we can do. And we're going to try and get them to a next level. And then next year comes. And this isn't just Beaverton. This is every school district in the state. And many states, I think 20, 23 perhaps states now that have discontinued education for the remainder of the year, something, some large number.
Sounds
So
about
this is a lot of people in the same boat here, trying to figure this out. But it just seems like such a monumental task for people in education to get them back up to speed again next year, assuming everything, clicks right in August and we're back in school.
right. The biggest part right now is getting people started back up. Since March 13th, was the last day of school for us. You know, it has been so up in the air, not knowing what's going to happen. Are we going to make these days up? Well, now after that significant amount of time, it feels like the beginning of September. But you don't have that luxury of coming to school with, five, six, or just the one teacher potentially in the elementary working with you on the regular. You got a mom and a dad, potentially both parents working, kids potentially left at home,
Yeah.
or maybe parents that don't have a math background to assist in math.
Right.
Those are difficult situations. And it's easy for me to say to a kid, we'll just go on to Khan Academy. There's a lot of videos out there. Well, if they don't have that internet, that
Right.
becomes an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the state is saying right now, no matter what, on campus, the only people that should be there, of course, the essential workers and or parents. Only time students should be on a campus is if they're with their parent, potentially in a vehicle where they might need to grab some essential medications, or once the stay-at-home order gets lifted, we have already turned on all of our Wi-Fi in the buildings where people could pull up right next to it so they could have strong, reliable internet access. Is that optimal for people to be sitting in their car? No. And I'm watching nationwide where some peace and quiet, where mom and dad might be working virtually from home in the house. The kids have to go to the car or out and back. You know, some of my admin meetings, a few of my admin have to be outside due to connectivity issues and or to get away from, the noise. So those are also additional challenges that, working folks have with kids, and it becomes hard. And
Yeah.
especially the ones, dealing with my boys are like, Dad, they've made it clear we don't have to do all this work. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, I think there's a real challenge in all parents understanding the seriousness of their student taking the work and finishing it and completing it, um, and those that don't, what does that mean? So, boy, a real challenge for you that you're facing. So,
yeah.
you're working with the team. The team is putting together uh, lesson plans and packets, and now you've got to get these out to how many kids?
1,000.
You got to get these out to 1,000 kids across what, 583 miles? What's our
Well,
district?
we're 225 square miles. I think you were looking at the whole county.
Okay, so over 225 miles of roadway that you need to travel to get the packets into the hands of those who are in parts of the community that either one, the student doesn't have a computer, or secondly, there's no internet if they did. And then you have to pick them up, I presume.
What That's what we're going to get to. As of right now, the plan has, been a challenge getting everything up and running. We have been tasked with many different areas when considering distance learning: the academic, the fiscal, geographic, governance, labor management, legal, student supports. So just trying to coordinate our busing and meals to get it out to the 1,000 students, because not all students would ride a bus normally. But we are tasked with trying to make sure every kid's got the opportunity to get the meals. But more importantly, we have to guarantee that every student has the option to get the academic material. Whether they complete it or not is on them. Once those packets get out to them, we are most likely not going to collect any of that. What we plan to do is have short little assessments where we could then on a phone try to have a little, conversation, 5 little quick formative assessment questions that may be, what's, blue, yellow, red, or green, and the student just has to answer, well, answer's A, to try to see if they're understanding the content. And then we got to then use that information to try to inform our instruction to see, are we ready to move on or not? Now, we already know the struggle to get 100% engagement. That is going to be extremely difficult. But I'm asking that we continue to try. We are going to utilize our support staff. In a couple of letters that have gone out and I posted, the two-way communication, I hope the parents don't get annoyed with us after a while where, the phone calls that do come in and out, we're going to try to reach out, because if we can't reach them through Zoom or, through the internet, we've got to try to make a way for us to guarantee that they're getting the food, the the meals, the academic, and then that they're understanding some of it. We're not expecting 100% proficiency or mastery, but we're just trying to get them to gain an understanding and some level of proficiency in the hot topics.
Will you be creating a frequently asked questions that's on the website, or maybe there's already one and I haven't looked? I'm just imagining Karen and the team there in the central office, and the phones ringing in the school offices, everyone trying to answer these questions of the unknowns. Right now, are you directing everyone to the phones, to the central office?
No, right now it's, we're trying to develop our plan and finalize it. And then more specific content or building level questions, we're trying to get them to, the principals of the building. Because a lot of the questions that come in would be kind of difficult for me to answer all of them. We have been using a lot of the Facebook Messenger, emails. We've been getting a lot of questions. And we're trying to answer them as quickly as possible, because in the beauty, though, is we're not alone, like you mentioned earlier. I've been relying on a lot of great support of not just my team that's employed with Beaverton, but a great team of superintendents I've been working with, my organization, and just looking at, this whole continuity of learning plan. But we realize we have some difficult tasks. We were trying to really make sure, can we get the food out to every student? Well, and that's why next week our plan is to begin busing all the materials and the food. We're still going to allow the pickup at the school if people want to do the pickup, because some folks have reached out to us and said, that's all right, we don't need you coming by our house, we'd rather just run by the school and pick it up. It might be on their way home from work or whatnot. But
so there may be people listening in, Joe, scratching their head right now saying, what are you talking about delivering food?
Great point, sir. My apologies. So just because the school's closed, the state of Michigan was one of the first ones in the nation, that agreed to continue feeding all the students. So that was deemed essential work, and that's why some of our projects, with our freezer cooler issue at the elementary, but our gals and guys in Chartwells have been busting their, what's to try to provide breakfast and lunch for any student in the community, whether they attend Beaverton schools or not. If they live in the district of Beaverton, they have a right to a breakfast and a lunch. And all we're asking is that, they indicate to us how many students they have, and then on the 2 days of pickup that we currently have, they can pick up to 3 days worth of meals per kid. And that's just a breakfast and then 3 lunches for that student as well. So if you have a family of 4 students, let's just say under the age of 18, and you go there on a Monday to pick up for those 4 kids, you could be dealing with not 4 meals, but 12, 3 days, lunch and breakfast. We were even allowed to start offering, hot meals. Folks would have to most likely, if they want it warm, take it home and crisp it, But those meals are,
And so people might be wondering, where are those tax dollars coming from? Are those local tax dollars?
well, how the flow through works, Scott, I really couldn't tell you the exact details of it, but it is, there's a federal reimbursement program that recognizes, the amount of kids that sometimes their best meals are at school. And the fact that they're not attending school, felt that, all right, what can we do to help them out? Since we give already universal breakfast and lunch, made it real easy for us to decide, hey, let's make this happen. The hardest part was working out the logistics to try to, not just tell people, hey, come to the school to pick it up, because we know we're such a large district. We realized that was difficult, but the coordination of plans, to start next week is not just say, well, you got 9 bus runs, send 9 bus runs, but those 9 buses don't transport every student. So
So,
now,
so Joe, it's a federal program,
yeah,
and our students qualify based on federal standards. And based on that, the school is subsidized to supply the meals to the students.
correct,
Okay.
correct. Not not one penny of general fund dollars is coming out of Beaverton schools, but we know that, what was it, last week? I think we produced on Thursday 2,700 meals that went out to families. Um, so we're pretty happy with that. We see some larger districts that, of course, are producing a lot more. We're not looking to compare with them, but
So logistics wise, what you're saying is it's sort of a logistics nightmare to get food to these families that are in need, in addition to the packets of information for educational purposes.
I would say it's a challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And to coordinate all that, especially going into next week, yeah, it's going to be a challenge. This week, we're going to be tasked with, which kids are on what bus, how many requests of meals, and then
Yeah.
also getting the correct content to them. So it's not going to be just a bus driver on the bus. We're going to need a few adults with them, with all social distancing being recognized. We are well aware of that, with the driver in front, maybe another adult in the middle of the bus and one at the back.
Hmm. So is there anything we didn't cover in terms of the educational packet before we move on to some other areas that are really concerns of students and families?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we talked about the lack of internet and
Hmm.
some of the other issues. Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm a senior,
Hmm.
and I've got some big events that are coming up in my life. Graduation parties, proms. What's the status of those?
Great question. This is probably the toughest question that you're going to ask, because I have a boy who's a senior and he's lost out on almost everything. So the class of 2020, I'm speaking to Beaverton as well. I'm devastated for them. I mean, this is supposed to be the best time. They're fun. Now to get to the events, Mr. Roberts and I have been working. I know he put a survey out. 90% of the respondents, when we asked class of 2020 and or their parents to respond, 90% of them would like us to conduct a face-to-face ceremony, which we were pleasantly happy to see those numbers, because for me, we're going to do whatever it takes to try to have a face-to-face graduation ceremony. At what point? That's the biggest question. We don't know. Um, we've got, just for people to be aware, Central Michigan, they're supposed to be doing their commencements for the spring here within a week or two. Well, their commencements are August 15th. So what we put out there, are people still interested if we're doing it as late as late June, July, maybe even into August? The one thing that I will do my darndest to guarantee is a face-to-face graduation before anything, in terms of the other events that you mentioned. Now, others may want the prom, others may want the other cool things, but right now those are just not a reality. I mean, we've had to postpone, um, cancel. I even saw, I think it was Bullet Creek talked about a prom even in August. So we kicked that around today. what would that look like? Would you guys even be interested? Where would it be held? How would it be school sponsored?
Yeah.
Because those kids would have no connection to us. Now,
Mhm.
the hardest part is holding off of commencements, because a lot of students usually right in the early June start having those open house graduation parties.
Mhm.
Well, if we haven't had the commencements, can they still have a graduation party? Yeah, that's their choice. If they're on track and in good standing, yeah, go ahead, have fun with it. But until we can get the all clear to do something within reason, we'll have to hold off our commencement ceremonies. But we are looking at 4 or 5 different scenarios, whether it be indoors, outdoors, uh, under the lights. We even went back to in the 90s, the football field.
Yeah.
But what happens if it rains? Then we're back indoors.
Yeah.
Is our gym suitable enough? Well, then if we go with something like that, limits on ticket numbers would be very tight. And that's the last thing we want to do is, tell a student who's graduating, putting in 13 years, hey, sorry, you can only have one of your parents there.
Mhm.
That would break my heart, because when I heard some
So,
of the
so is it fair to say right now that graduation is primary in terms of focus? Other things like prom are secondary in nature in terms of focus, but your focus and your team's focused on having some sort of a graduation ceremony.
yeah,
Timing is a question, what it looks like is a question, but that's something you're saying we will have. We want to have, I
we
guess.
want to have, man, I would love to give certainties not in this world, but I can't.
Yeah.
But
That's
I've already
something you're working hard to make happen.
Yeah, I've already talked to our board, talked to Mr. Stroyeski, our board president, said things will be different. We're not going to be shaking hands.
Yeah.
He may be, having to wear gloves to
Mhm.
hand out the diploma covers.
Yeah.
Um, it's just, we've got to rethink the way we were doing things,
Hmm.
try to figure out a way that we could do it to keep social distancing.
To make it through this stretch.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
right now, the number one focus has been getting this continuity learning plan, getting all the logistics figured out,
Hmm.
and trying to ease some tensions, throughout for everyone.
Yeah.
It's affecting everyone.
Right.
It's unique.
Well, so an individual, a student who's looking to go on to college is, likely has a lot of things in place already, but if they don't have things in place, work directly with the high school and the counselor, advisor, and their principal to get things put in place. Everyone's still working on those things.
Yes, for sure. Especially the ones that are, uncertain of what they're doing next. Whether just going into the workforce, I mean, that's fine. We're still trying to help them and assist them all the way through. Those that are trying to go on to college, yeah, continue to communicate. Reach out, Miss Phillips, Mr. Roberts, Miss Johnson. They're all still available. We may not be able to go see them face to face, but if they have access to get someone, they can do a Zoom, email, a phone call. We are being tasked with, and I've been asking even all my folks, like, check everything. If you got a Facebook message coming in, an email, we want to make sure that, we're attending to the questions, the concerns, because, yeah, like you mentioned, there's a lot of frequently asked questions.
Right. Life hasn't stopped. It's just
Just
transitioned a bit during this period, right?
just the
Yeah.
face to face has stopped.
We want to remind those who are watching, if I haven't touched on a question that you're really interested in, and it's something that we can legitimately ask and might be able to be answered, go ahead and there's a chat button at the bottom of your screen, and you can submit a question, and I'll try to capture those as we go along. So during this time, we also have athletics programs, and we also have summer looming, we think, although I just peeked over my shoulder and saw some snow showers, but I think it was snow, maybe hail, I don't know. 'Tis the season. Nonetheless, spring sports. Spring sports are all canceled, right?
That's correct.
So
Yeah,
no baseball, no softball, no track.
none. And those that did not finish their winter season, it's been canceled as well. You know, for the most part, Beaverton Athletics, we were completed. You know, the wrestling team was able to finish, but those that were still competing in the postseason of the winter's seasons, yeah, that got canceled as well.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
Oh, it is, particularly, I don't know what it is with our Beaverton sports teams, but it seems like every time we have a team that is in position to make a run, either somehow through the MHSAA we get put into a division in the playoffs that doesn't work really well for us and never has, or something happens. And here's the something for this year in terms of, man, just a couple of fabulous spring sports teams that were going to be on the field that oh, it's heartbreaking. I mean, I'm heartbroken as a fan and a community member with high hopes, and boy, can't imagine for the kids and the parents
And coaches,
and the coaches, of course.
I one of the things I learned the most with coaching is I found more love in the sport than I ever did competing,
Mm-hmm.
working with the athletes. So, I mean, for those kids to lose, especially the seniors, to lose out on their final hurrah, their last season, and all the other fun things that go with the end of the school year for seniors, it's you can't even put words to it, and to watch how it's affected my kid, how it's almost makes me emotional because just to envision that around the country. I'm only dealing with my one senior student.
Yeah.
It's just
Joe, we have a good question that's come in. For those students wanting to enter the workforce, could they officially graduate when school was supposed to end, even if the graduation ceremony is at a later date? Because many jobs require a diploma, so they would be waiting on the job until they get it, until they get the diploma.
wow, that's a great question. But I won't say no to that. We would work with that employer, if they have met all the requirements, from the Michigan Department of Ed at that time, June 3rd, May, and they didn't have the opportunity to receive that diploma, then I know we'll make it right. We'll work with that student and that employer so that they don't miss a beat. We are not going to hold any of that just because we didn't have the official ceremony. We can get, if they met all the requirements, we can get them the diploma. They can still be part of the ceremony and just get the diploma covered. If that's what it took, we
So
would do.
a related question to that would be, will this have an effect on scholarships awarded to seniors who will be attending a university? Will the credit, non-credit option on their transcript affect the GPAs for acceptance to a program of choice?
So the beauty that's coming out, and we were really trying to vet this out, is that the one grade class that has to have grades are seniors. All the rest you can put credit, no credit. So then it becomes locally controlled. How do you assign those credits? Those grades to those seniors? A lot of the schools are looking at what their grades were as of March 13th and kind of, all right, that's where you're at. You engage with us, you work with us, you try. That's probably what you're going to end up with. And it's all locally controlled. So our plea, our beg to our seniors is please don't disengage. I
Yeah.
know this is hard for you guys, but just give it the old college try. Put forth a little bit of effort, and we're not going to penalize you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last thing we want to do is, penalize a kid for these circumstances.
I think the other important part of that is by disengaging now, you're disengaging your brain. And so if you've been laying around for the last 4 weeks and playing games or just disengaged,
Mhm.
do that for another 4 weeks or 8 weeks. And what are you going to do when it's time to re-engage? Your mind kind of goes soft on you.
Exactly. And that's why part of it, we want to get the kids engaged. We're hoping we can get some content that they may enjoy. I know the old adage, school's not for me or school stinks. Sometimes kids use other words, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the last thing we want is apathy to set in.
Mm-hmm.
You know what happens when you're laying around for 6 months, you're not working out. What happens to your body? Well, the brain
Right.
is a muscle. Same
That's
thing.
right. Joe, what's going to happen to your Board of Education meetings?
Cool, great question. So next week, Monday, is our first board meeting that we will have during these uncertain times. We are going virtual. I posted out there today that we can still, we're going to do it as Zoom just like this. We're doing a trial run just to make sure we can all connect and, you know, engage the community. But I put out this morning, a plea for folks in the community, for communications or expressions from the public. They can still do that, but they're being asked to reach out and call central office and or send an email to Karen Carpenter so we can address those, communications that they want to be heard at a board meeting. We're cutting it off by Friday because if we allow the types of questions that come in and out throughout the board meeting, it would just be very cumbersome, number one, to try to answer questions that come off on the fly. But, we want to be willing to respond to everyone's concerns. So if there are communications, there are expressions that people want to put out there, please, we're giving you an opportunity. Reach out, send an email, give us a call. But yeah, for the time being, we held on as long as possible. We moved the board meeting a week with the hope and the prayer that we would be back in school or face to face. Well, we don't have that now. So
Yeah.
April 20th, the board workshop prior to the board meeting from 5 to 6 has been canceled. Well, that workshop was supposed to focus directly on my evaluation, which we'll get to. Right now, it's being postponed by the letter of the law, but we will conduct a normal board meeting Monday, April 20th, 6 p.m. It'll be through Zoom. Your board president, Mr. Strahaski, will be the host and running it.
And
And
where can people get the address for that Zoom meeting? Will it be?
we're going to be publicizing that short. We just want to make sure we can get everyone in and do the trial run. But we'll be broadcasting it through Facebook page, the website, a live feed, and also we'll be making an all call at the end of the week.
And if someone's not already engaged in terms of the new technology that the school has for communicating to the public, where do they go to get the app? What's the address?
Oh, I think it's just zoom.us. You had to ask that?
I'm thinking the app for the school, Joe, for the phone.
Oh. I'm sorry. So the one, just go to the Play Store or, the Apple, geez, pizza, I can tell I don't use Apple products. Google Play Store or the Apple and just search Beaverton Beavers or Beaverton, Michigan. And that'll give you the information, about the upcoming board meeting. But I know, Mr. Govich, you love Facebook. It will be on our Facebook site and it will get posted out, on all our social media platforms.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can get the app to Beaverton Schools by, I think by going to the school website. You can download it there. There's an app that's a picture for getting the app right on the home page of the school's web page, I believe. And then as Joe mentioned, you can go to the App Store, Play Store, and do Beaverton, Michigan, Beaverton Rural Schools, and you can download the app, and then you can get directly to all of the information, all the notifications, and all good things happening out of the school district kind of get pushed out via that app. It's a great app and way to connect with the school. It's at App Store, Beaverton Schools. Yeah. So make sure you check that out. I started to ask about Little League. So was just thinking here today, I need to get a notice out to the Beaverton Area Business Association group about the 4th of July celebration. We generally have a June golf outing to raise money for the fireworks and the 4th of July. So we have all of these things up in the air as well, including the annual fireworks and the entire festival here in the community. Little League, that's up in the air as well, I suppose.
Yeah, the fact that we're still on a stay home, stay safe order. Yeah, right now, everything is on hold. The one thing that we have been able to do, it says campus is closed, but for our walking track for the community, that's still a recommended essential, thing that folks can do, but we have not been able to allow, groups of people to come play catch or do those types of things on the field, to even take infield grounders. once we get guidance from, the state,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm hoping we can get back to playing as soon as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Joe, is there anything we didn't cover? Any frequently asked question that you're getting often? And I see Karen Carpenter online. We should have her on here. She could tell us exactly what the FAQs are. But any frequently asked question that you might be getting that we didn't ask you?
I don't think so. And I just, I appreciate you doing this, Scott. I just wanted to put it out there and, be able to try to answer questions. I know every once in a while I'll put a letter out, but I know some folks, would rather just hear it. And I
Hmm.
don't know if you were getting any questions. I don't see too many in the chat over here.
Yeah, we did take a couple actually. Hmm.
Um, but the only thing again, I gotta beg people, please, please, please. We're only in the phase 1 of this. Phase 2, everything could change. I
Hmm.
mean, already we're making changes just to the meal delivery. We're gonna
Right.
try to start transporting it. So, but it has been pretty cool to watch and see, through some of the social medias that some of the teachers have been able to get students online. That part has been kind of cool to see.
Hmm.
I wish I could guarantee all 1,000 students were doing it,
Yeah.
but
Joe, is there anything that any one of us as community members who care deeply about our school, anything that we can do?
if you the biggest that I even asked our staff is like, when you reach out to these families, or if you have a great connection with a student that they'll confide in you,
Yeah.
ask them about their friends, because a
Yeah.
lot of times their friends won't speak about, oh, everything's good, Mr. P, yep, we got plenty of food.
Hmm.
And a lot of times they say that just to appease us, to get us off the phone. But if we know a friend, a colleague, a peer, someone that's struggling and needs some additional people to reach out, please call the schools, so that we can try to get some adults, even if we have to make a personal visit. We talked about that even today.
Hmm.
If there are some in some remote areas where the buses can't get to them, or whatever it takes, we're trying. The biggest dilemma that we ran into was, some folks wanted, the packets mailed home. Well, when you start combining 5, 6 classes per student
Right.
weekly, that was going to be a challenge. And then
Yeah.
still ask them to drive up to get their meals. So that's kind of why we're trying to, coordinate everything together so that we can ensure that the meals are getting out there and the packets.
Hmm.
One thing we won't be able to ensure is, are they safe? Are they doing well? They're, and how they're progressing on the academics. And that's where, you know, we really want to have our staff reaching out, making more and hearing voices, not just emails. And we're going to use some of our support staff to make those contacts as well, because the just the first time I did a Zoom with the whole staff, it was awesome just to see the faces.
Yeah.
When you go day to day seeing 1,000 students plus 100 some staff, and then you see your own 4 walls,
Hmm.
man, that drives you nuts after a while.
Yeah.
So it's nice to do some of these, see some faces, and
Yeah. And if there's, we have a great Lions Club in this community, great business association, great people in a lot of different organizations who simply care. I know many of them are already doing work around this topic, but I know others would come around this topic if there was an identified need. And I think about these kids that, need a little TLC and wonder how can we help? How can we reach out? You see these kids around the ballparks and you get a chance to rough them up a little bit, and now you just don't know. You know what I mean? And it just concerns you as a person who cares.
yeah, that's why, said that reach out to a friend. You may tell us you're fine, but is there someone or it was a conversation I had with a parapro just last week. I'm like, I know you've had some great connection with the kids, but when you reach out to them, you might have to pry a little bit to see if any of their friends are struggling, because they might be able to confide in you where
Hmm.
their friends won't say, yeah, I'm good. Everything's good. So
Yeah. Well, I just want to tell you that I'm just going to wrap up. Then I have a few things that I want to wrap up with and say and talk about some upcoming shows. But I just wanted to read this. Thank you, Joe, his staff, our board members, and teachers for caring about our students, continuing education, and heartfelt concern for their stress and family stress. As much as parents try to shield their kids from this, they know things are stressful for everyone. So thank you for your leadership. And that was from one of our viewers this evening, and we thank her for sending that in. And that's a kind of a good summation, really.
Can I make one plug also, because I have not mentioned them yet? I got to thank our Beaverton City folk, for helping out, the workers.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people are the alleged, kids weren't going to pick up meals because it was our police. But I'll tell you, the support and the connection we've had with Beaverton City has been paramount. It's been awesome, and right now we're looking at next week being an issue of loading the buses. Some of their city employees are going to help us load buses.
Yeah.
So thanks to Heath Kaplan, thanks to his, staff, the officers, Mr. Davis and Gano, we can't do that without you. And, if people are worried about the police assisting us, folks, we all have to come together.
Yeah, we have bigger worries.
Not just the
We have
school.
bigger concerns. And yeah, that's good, Joe. Thank you for pointing that out, and for Mayor Nah and the city council and the staff for really coming together. And that's what small communities do in times of need. That's just what we do, and that's what Beaverton does. And so it's pretty emblematic of this community. So thank you for mentioning that.
My
Well,
pleasure.
Joe, it's been a pleasure talking to you this evening under some trying circumstances. I know it's been difficult for you, to say the least, and your team of great people who are working hard to try and pull this off during these times of uncertainty. But you're working hard at it. I know your team cares. The school board cares, and it will work. And this too shall pass. We will get through it, and we'll be better for it. I'm convinced of that. We have, before I say goodbye to you, we have a couple of upcoming shows that I want to mention to those of you who are watching. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you joined late, these shows are being done on a fairly regular basis. This one is a little bit out of order from what we have been doing in terms of doing a Sunday night, a Wednesday night, and a Friday night. So beginning this Wednesday, we are going to continue with the regular shows that were somewhat planned. And the one that we're going to show next is Red Rave. And Red Rave is a Jason Brown film, and we're going to show parts 1, 2, and 3, and that is going to begin on April the 15th, 17th, and the 19th, with all shows at 7 o'clock. And we've been doing these fairly regularly with really nice attendance and lots of families watching, so good numbers in terms of each individual person watching. I know sometimes there's 3 to, I've heard as many as 8 people watching from one household. So we're getting some good watchers, and we're going to continue with these, as I mentioned. But this film right here is all about the basketball season of 2002. That team went 25-1 and took this community on one heck of a ride, and we had a marvelous time watching them through the year. And Jason captured this whole season in these Red Rave films. So it's broken down into a 3-part series. Again, we're going to begin those on Wednesday night. So it'll go Wednesday, Friday, and then Sunday, all shows at 7 o'clock. So after that, then we'll sort of announce wherever we're going to go from there. But that's what we know at this point. At this point, what I typically do is say thank you again, Joe, for joining. Appreciate your time and appreciate your effort for the community. And what I'd like to do is close with a quick prayer and then a quick final thought before I say goodbye and good night. So if you'd bow your heads with me wherever you're at, please, we'll say a quick prayer. Father, we thank you for this evening's conversation, and thank you for the opportunity to come together as a community around this topic and around caring. That's really what it's about. It's about caring for one another and trying to figure out a best way to make it through this situation that we find ourselves in here in our small part of the world. Although we know that there is heartache throughout the nation and throughout the world, and we just ask that your mighty hand continue to be upon it and watch over us here in Beaverton, Michigan, Lord, and wherever those people are watching from across the globe, and those who have experienced some death in their families, we think of them and we ask for specific comfort on those, and for those who are currently sick, and for our leaders at all levels. We think about our president, our congresspeople, we think about our superintendents, we think about our mayors, we think about our governors, all of those people who are trying to navigate the unknown here. Let us be mindful of the fact that this is a issue far bigger than any one of us, that none of us foresaw, and neither could any one of us resolve on our own. It will take us coming together as a nation and as a people and as a community. And we thank you for this community of Beaver. In Jesus' name, amen. So thank you for joining this evening. Let me just finish with this final thought, and it is this, as I finish every one of these programs in the series. Until next time, where you can, hug someone, tell someone that you love them, and give thanks that you have the opportunity to live here in this great country, the greatest country on earth, the United States of America. And there's already way too much negativity out there in the world. You can find it almost anywhere you look. Don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution. If you can't say something good, why say anything at all? Mr. Passalacqua, thank you. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work to you and your team and all of those in education. All right?
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.